Uh-huh.
And
Yes. Let's hear the Thai story first.
so when we raised this new regiment, we made our own designs, our own cap patches, our own shoulder tatters, and our own tie.
Mm.
Much to the disgust of Army headquarters. And my first commanding officer was a chap called Colonel Narinder Singh. He had come from the Lieutenant Colonel then, come from the Hudson's Horse. I knew him since he was in the academy about a year senior to me. And I was the second in command. And after he did about a year and a half, I took over the command. Now, the point here was that we wanted to get these colors. The colors means it's black and flame. Black and flame.
Oh,
Black is steel and flame is the gun.
wow. That's a lot of
So,
abstraction. Yeah.
yeah. And we made these ties and the cap badges, which I'll show you later.
Mm.
And Army headquarters said, no, nothing doing. All you regiments, which are not cavalry units, earlier from the British days,
Mm.
which had converted, should follow only one design.
Okay.
One cap badge, that is the mailed fist of the armored corps,
Mm.
the tank. This mailed fist
Oh.
means fist, no fingers,
Ah.
fist.
Mm.
Taken from a German general called Heinz Guderian,
Mm.
who during World War II commanded a corps of tanks.
Mm.
And he was being restrained by Hitler and his general staff to, go slowly because the French defenses are there and all that. I don't know if I spoke of this earlier, but in World War II, the French had made a very strong border defense called the Maginot Line
Mm.
along the Rhine River.
Mm.
This is all underground, a lot of activity underground, about 5 stories below ground, ammunition stores, living quarters, medical aid systems, and water supply, everything. But on the surface were huge turrets with guns.
Okay.
Minefields laid all around with wire obstacles and minefields so that if any thrust came
Mm.
directly from Germany into France, from east to west,
Mm.
they would defend it. That's called the Maginot Line.
Okay.
And this line tapered off at the Ardennes forest. There's a forest in Germany, if you look at the map, which is northeast of France. And after the Ardennes forest, there are the Holland and Belgium. They were independent countries. They had neither joined Germany nor France. They had maintained their independence. So there was a very thin line between the Belgium border and the French border. So what the Germans decided that they go through the forest, the Ardennes forest, where the French and British thought that it would not be easy for tanks to cross that because very up and down, a lot of trees and all that. Go through that, and they drive straight to the coast at Belgium. He did that. And when his superior staff in the army headquarters and Hitler's headquarters said, look here, there are a lot of defenses, go slow, let the logistics catch up with you. He said, fist, no fingers, punch. That is known as the German blitzkrieg. He had his guns, he had his tanks, and he had his aircraft supporting him, and he drove straight to the sea. That resulted in the British running away from the defensive division. They had a whole expeditionary force comprising almost a corps of troops, that being the Lieutenant General's command. And they landed up at a place called Dunkirk, which is on the southern coast of Belgium, to evacuate. And Hitler could have destroyed them there. But for some unknown reason, he told Guderian that when you reach Dunkirk, halt, I'll give you further orders. So Guderian halted, gnashing his teeth. We don't know why Hitler stopped that. And as usual, the British, they fight in other people's countries because they're an island nation. So they bhago from there as fast as they could. And to them, the greatest event of the earlier years of the World War Two, with the fact that they managed to get the better part of their army back to Britain, broken, torn, and with very low morale. And picked them up from there. All right. So, fish no fingers is Heinz Guderian, and the Indian Armored Corps accepted that as its sign. So, the Armored Corps Center and School and all the regiments which were raised, who were not originally horse regiments, were asked to follow that same badge. And we, the 66th, were the first regiment, which was an armored regiment, not a cavalry regiment. And they said that you have to follow that design, laid done by Army headquarters. We said, no, we don't want to follow that design, and we disagree with the Army headquarters. And we got a good lot of bamboos, as they say, from Army headquarters. But luckily, my first commanding officer, General Har Prasad, had become a lieutenant general, and he was the adjutant general of the army. He was the man who insisted, he was in charge of all the ceremonials, the welfare, and the personal problems and the postings, everything, including the designs of your cap badges and things. But that comes under ceremonial and welfare. So I took 2-3 days leave from Ahmednagar, where we were being raised. I landed up in his house, and I rang up his wife, Shobha, who we all were madly in love with when we were second lieutenants. He was my first year. And she told, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, she said, hello, Titch. What are you doing here? I said, we come to see your husband, who's a monster of a man. She said, why? What's he done now? I said, he doesn't allow us to use our designs that we made for the new regiment. He insists on something he decided, Army headquarters. So after a few minutes, the general walked in, and I said, good evening, sir. And she used to call him Naughty or something. Nata, he was Nata, he was short chap. So he said, Nata, say Nata. She said, Nata, why are you bullying this poor fellow? He's your own second lieutenant. He said, what have I done now? I said, sir, I'm just telling the lady that we want these designs and you're not accepting them. He said, why don't you follow the Army headquarters order? I said, why should we? We're a new regiment. We have to do our own thing. What's wrong with our own design? Better than what Army headquarters does. We got this tie accepted from him. He said, okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll give you a Scotch whiskey and don't come back here. So I had a Scotch whiskey and I came back with permission to go ahead with all this. All right. That's the guy. Now, we had spoken a little earlier about my way back from Staff College with Surupi. Let me tell you what this is. I had to drive for 3 or 4 days, 2-3 nights on the way before I reached Delhi. We had a Fiat car, the Fiat 1100, black in color. Lovely, lovely car. It had a dicky at the back. But the beauty of the car was that you could put the back seat down. And it became a single space from the front seat to the end of the dicky. Right? So we put the 2 bachas there after padding and all that sort of thing, so they could play around with their toys and so on. Vikram, my son, must have been about 5 years old. And Nandita, 2 years younger, so he's 2 years old. These 2 little kids were subject. They felt like sleeping. They had plenty of cushions to sleep on. They wanted to play their toys to play with. And Shruti was in front on the left and I was on the right. And we took all the baggage and I had a carrier on the roof. So we dumped not very many packages. She had a bag, I had a bag, and the 2 kids had a bag each. And we had some water. She had a ghada of water in the front seat, drinking water. And she strapped that up on top and I should drive like that. And a fellow called Gurdeep Bedi was also posted to 19 days. I was in Baramulla. He was further ahead near the border called a place called Uri, where the Jhelum River debouches into what is now Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So towards Muzaffarabad. So Gurdeep and I decided to travel together because 2 heads are better than 1. We had decided where we will stay the night and we drove like that. And he used to stay behind and we used to halt in the evening, but you get far left behind, I was leading. He says, why the hell are you driving so fast? I said, I'm doing about 80-90 kilometers an hour. It's a clear road. What's wrong with that? We got to get going. He says, look, I don't drive that fast. Now, Gurdeep Bedi was the younger brother of a Major Harpal Bedi, who used to play chess with me in Nagaland. 1956, who helped me, or who sent a signal from the army headquarters to my commanding officer that the chef wants to meet some girls and why don't we give him some leave? He got me my leave. So we were good friends. And this is his younger brother, so I made good friends with him. But he's a cavalry officer. So I think, I'm not sure which regiment he was from. I think he's from the 7th Cavalry. So Gurdeep said, look here, we call him Babaji because you look like a Gandhi, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had a tremendous wife called Tina Bedi. She could drive any type of vehicle. She could drive tractors, scooters, cars, tanks, anything like. She was one of those bold women from Punjab, and a very attractive lady. And we wondered how Gurdeep managed her at all. I think she managed him all the time. So I told Tina, tell him to press on the accelerator. No, the Babaji's the colony honda. That means Babaji can't go too fast. So it doesn't matter. I'll halt every and then you catch up. So we went down like this. We went to Bombay. Then from Bombay, we went to Ahmednagar, the old home of the Ahmed Kaur. We were well received. And from there, we went to a place called Aurangabad. Now, Aurangabad is east of Pune, Maharashtra. And that is the place where this Sridhar Sai Baba's temple is. Now, if you look at the religious people went there, there's Sridhar Sai Baba and the new kept of fuzzy hair.
Sai Baba.
He called himself Sai Baba also. But he was a modern Sai Baba, and Sridhar Sai Baba was the original Sai Baba. The second Sai Baba, who was located near Pondicherry, he claimed that he was an avatar of the Sridhar Sai Baba. Some believed him, some didn't. Both were very religious men. When we went to the temple of Sridhar Sai Baba, we were so happy to see a very simple temple. And his murti in marble, I think it was. Nicely put. And his whole history as to what he did. He started praying over there, then people came, then what miracles he performed, and so on and so. And he's a great saint. Thousands of people come there every day. But we being military people were straight away ushered in, people have some regard for the soldiers who are here today and gone tomorrow. So they allowed us to darshan much earlier. And whatever you wanted to pay, you could pay. Then you could see the hut where he did his samadhi and so on, very bamboo hut, very poor setup. I'm telling you this because I went there again and I'll tell you what happened later. Anyway, from there we continued. There were a couple of incidents in the way which I want to tell you. I was driving very fast because after Sridhar Sai Baba, we were on the way to Bhopal or someplace, I don't know where we went, very fast. And I must have been traveling about 80 kilometers now. 200 yards ahead, I found a woman with a ghara on her head who tried to cross the road. I was quite distance away, but I blew the horn. So she stepped aside. Having stepped aside, I thought, fine, now I can go press the accelerator again. Now my car was picking up speed and I must have been going at about 20, 25 kilometers an hour. But then she suddenly decided to cross the road. I jammed the brakes and I couldn't really halt the car. She got a push on my bumper and she fell on the road on her head. Now, Nivedita, if you fall on your head, there are a lot of blood vessels here and they bleed like hell. So you look a sorry sight. It may not be much of an injury, but you look a sorry sight with blood all sides. Sufi was marvelous. She opened the door, she took this ghara of water and poured it over her head straight away. We found that she was not quite conscious. Then all her villagers from the side started connecting to ghara of the car. So I picked her up and put her in Srupi's seat and asked Srupi to get back to with the kids, the back seat. And she had put a whole ghara on her head. So I asked her, why have you put the ghara on her head, whole water? She said, because the water will cool the nut and the blood will stop. So anyway, I drove like that straight to the town, which is another 30 minutes driving. And I told those chaps on the side who were collected that don't worry, we are going to look after. So we reached the town. I asked for the government hospital. So I went straight to the government hospital. I carried this lady in. I said, I'm waiting outside. I'm so and so. Here is my identity. Here's my car number. And I banged this lady, and I had his bleeding. So please check her out. So then one of the doctors came out and said, look, this is a motor car injury case. So the police has to come in. I said, fine. You call the police. He said, no. You have to go to the spot where you hit her. The nearest police station was way out, 20 kilometers behind. You have to report there. I said, okay, I'll do that. So you meanwhile look after this lady. And there was a waiting room there. So I kept Surupi and the bachas in the waiting room. I said, my wife is here. So you please save her life first, if it's required. Tell us that she's okay or not. But I waited for another 10, 15 minutes. And the doctor came and said, only a surface injury. She's fine. The brain is okay. She's a little fuzzy in the head, but that she'll come out of it. We've given her medicine. I said, thank you. So I went straight back, 20 kilometers, drove back, went to some local police thana. And, one of those old villages, India's old Mofussil towns. The police chief was an old man with a white beard, a white mustache hanging down. And he took out his pencil and his paper and wrote the FIR, you see. Slowly, letters were licking his tongue on it. And so I waited for 10 minutes. I said, get on with it. He said, why have you reported the case? I was an honest man. I mean, that was my mistake. And this lady was hit and now she's okay. I'm told she's in the hospital. She's all right. He said, but then I need confirmation from the hospital. I said, all right, we'll send you a telegram from the hospital. I've got no phones. I said, I have to drive back there. And the hospital will send you a postal telegram to say her condition. He said, all right, I'll keep the FIR pending till then. I said, you don't expect me to go there and come back. No, Major, you carry on. We will manage it, but I want that on my record, whether the woman is all right or whether she is dead. I want that. And then I said, this is my insurance also. Because in those days, if you had an accident, you lost your insurance money. You had a no claim bonus. You have it now also. If for 3 years you've had no claim, then your charges are down by 33% or something. I said, there goes my no claim bonus. Major in those is not well paid, is poor chap. So I said, all right, I'll do that, but you must record and inform my insurance company. He said, no, do inform the insurance company. I said, all right. So I wrote a letter off to the insurance company, posted it. Went back to Bhopal, saw the woman perfectly well, requested the doctor to send a signal to that police chap, telegram. He says, yes, accident so-and-so, car number so-and-so, the lady is fine. And that's it. So then the lady got up. She said, I want to go back to my village. I'm not going to stay here. So I left my kids there, put the lady back with me in the car, took her back to the police station, confirmed that here she is, she's fine, and handed her over to a relative, said bye and namaskar and all that sort of thing, and I freed myself and I came up. Now that delayed us by a number of hours. The next stop was Mau. Now Mau is a hill station in central India, Madhya Pradesh, and MHOW, it's a military station. And there's the infantry school there, and what is known as the Army War College, and those days it was called College of Combat. And the College of Combat hadn't come, but there was a higher training wing and a junior training wing in the infantry, commanded by a lieutenant. They had a very nice club. I had already sent a letter to one of my friends who was doing a course of instruction there that, look, Saturday evening at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, I'll be there with wife and 2 children. We want to stay with you. He said, okay, fine. My house is there. You come and bang in, and there's a dance party in the club. So we'll take you to the dance. He said, fine. But I arrived at about 11:30 at night. When I went to the joker's house, I found that Aya there said, oh, Sahab, in sab to chale gaya dance karne. बच्चा लोग तो सो गया. Varun and Mishri, and Varun and not Varun, uh, Vikram. And Nandita said, Vikram was very fond of toys. He said, "Acha, bachcha so gaya, sara unka khalona le aao." I said, "Don't you go back into the car." So we went back to the club, and then two kids were very sleepy. We had given them something to eat. So we sleep in the car. They locked up the car with the windows down a couple of inches. And the chowkidar of the club was told that, look, my name is Major Sharma. I am dancing inside. And you come there and tell the Dalban that Major Sharma ka bacha ro raha hai, then we'll come out and sort them. So they slept. UPN went and danced. We danced at 4 in the morning. Then having slept for a few hours, I said, we got to get going. So we got going and we pushed off. We had rest houses on the way to stay. Now, the next story on this adventure is that we stopped at a PWD rest house about 20 kilometers short of a town called Shivpuri. Now, Shivpuri is famous for the Chambal ravines, where the dacoits of India reside.
Correct.
Okay? Putli Bai and all that sort of thing, you must have famous dacoits. So all of us had been warned that firstly, never cross Chambal ravines during night.
Correct.
And secondly, keep a weapon handy. Now, for that purpose, what I had done is that I had a .38 revolver. Now, .38 revolver, Smith & Wesson, is like the old Wild West. It's a revolver, 6 bullets, and you can cock it and shoot it, or you can double action shoot it like that. And I had placed this in the steering column of my car on top. You know, the steering column goes below the dash.
Right.
There, I strapped my holster after greasing it a bit, you know, a la Wild West and all that. And I used to practice putting my hand and getting the gun in my hand.
Okay.
Just fraction of a second. You just put your hand down the steering column under the dash, nobody can see where it's going. And you draw the gun. And I told Surupi that, look, when your dacoits come on both sides, you sit back and turn your head away to the outside window. I don't want to look into the front. Bachas at the back told, if daddy gets excited and bang bang takes place, you please lie down and close your ears.
Oh my God.
And I practiced. While I was driving practice, you draw the weapon, you do this, girl goes back, everything, shoot out of the window. I say, anybody comes and halts me and shoot him dead straight away. I'm not taking any chances. All prepared. So we stayed at a rest house about a couple of hours short of Shivpuri. And for the first time, we managed to pack early, get up at about 4 in the morning, and, you know, get the kids ready and give them something to drink and eat and put them in the car and Surupi in the car. And we drove. And we came into Shivpuri town in the early hours, about 6 in the morning. And we came into Shivpuri town. She said, look, I am feeling like a hot cup of tea. I said, fine. So we waited for some dhaba, and after some dhaba, I said, hot cup of tea for the lady and for me. Bachas were sleeping. I must tell you, she was pregnant with Lotika.
Oh.
Vikram was about 5 and Nandita was 3. And she was going to have Lotika after some months. But tummy was coming up a bit. So she leaned back, she was very happy with a cup of tea. And, you know, the man gave her a cooler. So he was holding very hot. And she eagerly took a sip and it slipped and it went down her front leg.
Oh my.
Boiling hot tea.
Oh.
And I didn't know what to do because she was in agony. Now, I've learned later, because this experience told me that if you get a burn injury, the first thing to do is to put cold water on the spot. It cools the skin.
Right.
As long as you're under cold tap. So I looked around, I said, there was a rest house nearby. I just walked into the rest house. I'm sorry, my lady is injured. I wasn't wearing my uniform. So the fellow said, I took her straight to the toilet and she took everything off and put her under a cold tap. Did that for a while. As long as she was in the cold tap, the burning sensation was not there. The moment you stop the tap, this is agony. So then we had heard there was no clinic, nothing there. There was a chemist shop nearby. So I asked him, burn injury ho gaya, kya karna chahiye? He gave me a tube of burn all. an ointment. Now, between you and me, if you were a gamer, never use burnout because it's greasy. You don't put anything greasy on the skin. The skin must have nothing on it. It must be absolutely clean, and you must have cold water poured on it till the agony reduces. After that, just bandage lightly. See, no ointment, no grease. I didn't know. So I applied this grease and all that. Anyway, she's a brave woman, so she took it on. She said, come on, let's carry on. And so we kept driving. I said, I better get to Delhi fast because the Delhi is like this. And I reached Delhi after some hours, driving like a bat out of hell. Luckily, no dacoits accosted us on the route. And therefore, I am secure as a human being who hasn't shot anybody. And so we reached Delhi, and I straight away took her to the army hospital, who immediately cleaned the whole thing and, gave her the necessary liquids or whatever they gave. And the skin was burnt, it was raw in between the breasts. They put some light dressing and told me what to do and all that. So then my dad was there, and he was retired in E1 Defense Colony, which we visited. I visited there. He also gave me some advice. You relax for a few days. So I had some joining time. So I spent about a week till Srupi was more able to travel. And I said, any case I take her to Jammu, it won't take much time from Delhi. So, your Delhi, you go to Pathankot, and from Pathankot you reach Jammu. It's a day's drive. So I said, we'll take you there, and your father and mother will look after you. So we did that. And these are some of the incidents that took place. The main lessons that one draws here is that you must have first aid boxes in your car. You must also have a fire extinguisher in your car, just in case. And secondly, that when there's an injury of this sort, you must have some basic knowledge of first aid, especially for burn injuries or cuts or gashes like that. You must have dressings, and you must have lint, sterilized lint, etc. in the car. Subsequently, in all my travels in the car, I always have all these things ready in the car. Right. Anyway, she got through all that, and the rest of the story, I reached Jammu, and then I went off to Baramunda, and she drove the car herself to her father's place, which was about a 45 minutes drive, I must say, and she went up the hill and went to her father's place quite happy. Okay. Now, there are one or two things about staff college, because now I am reaching 19th division. I'm going to talk about 19th division henceforth. I looked for the 19th division tie. It's a black tie. It's called the dagger division. So it has a hand and a dagger stuck all over the place on a black background. I had it. I don't know where it is now. Otherwise, I'd have worn it for you today. So, before I get to 19th division, I want to say one or two things about staff college. Now, we had a number of foreign officers in the war game, which I described earlier. What happens is that the enemy has come and is on the plains of Metropolium, which is on the plains of below Wellington and Canoe. There's a ridge feature. I think it's called Malanur Ridge, I recollect. It's a huge stone feature east to west, rocky in places and sandy in others, and erupting out of the flat land. So that was supposed to be the vital ground of the defending infantry division. It was us. And the enemy who are red land, the own people is red land, kind of warning. They had attacked that division and captured that vital ground, which is a Madanur Ridge. So I was a student, and I was put into the tank brigade, the armor brigade headquarters, which had to do the counter-attack. That when the enemy comes and takes this, you have to launch a counter-attack to get him off. Because your troops, your infantry from there has run away, the enemy is occupied. Before he can dig down and put his weapons on the ground, you must have a counter-attack. So they said the armored brigade has to do the attack, 3 tank regiments. And it's all not actual. It's a tactical exercise without troops. There are no troops there. What happens is that the students create the division. There is a divisional officer, the major general. He's a student. He wears the rank and everything. He gives orders. Then he's got his brigade commanders and his battalion commanders. They all get the respective orders. They do their defenses. And when they were drawn from there, the counterattack plan had to be made by the armored brigade, which was given to this division. So in this armored brigade headquarters, I was appointed as the DQ, the DAQMD. That is the chap in charge of the logistics and supply. So I'm a tank man. The brigade commander, they made an American officer called Jamie Hendricks. Let me describe Jamie Hendricks to you. 6'2" hair sticking straight up, very close cut that the American soldiers have.
Right.
Straight back. He was a commando, infantry commando. He didn't know the front side of a tank from the back side of a tank. He functioned with infantry. Now he became commando and also learning certain languages like Vietnamese and language of Cambodia. Had been dropped behind the lines of the Viet Cong, who were the guerrilla force trying to capture the whole of Vietnam. Their headquarters was in North Vietnam. And the French first battled this chap, and this Ho Chi Minh was the underground leader of the Viet Cong. And Vo Gian Giap was his guerrilla commander. They're all civilians, they're not in the military. And he made such a plan that he outed a full French division from there. Dien Bien Phu is the battle that took place where these people had ousted the French, and the French bhagoed from there. When the French bhagoed, then the Americans had in South Vietnam, which was being defended, with a chap called Syngman Rhee, who was an absolute nasty dictator. Nobody liked him. But the Americans, as usual, love backing a dictator because the dictator is supposed to give orders and everybody obeys.
Right.
In other words, the democracy of the United States ends at the coastline of the United States. Everywhere else, they want a dictator who's got the boss. They give him order, he does the job, and for him, they give him money. He get his children to America for Harvard University, anything free of charge, or whatever he wants. The modus operandi. So they were backing that way. I told you when I went to meet Srupi for the first time, my sister Kamla's husband had gone there, a neutral nations group from the United Nations to Cambodia to supervise some peace after the Americans had bhagoed from there. Anyway, so this chap, Jamie Hendricks, had been dropped behind the enemy lines, and he was organizing the people of Cambodia, the tribes of Cambodia, northern Cambodia, to hold the Mekong River. The Mekong River flows between Vietnam and Cambodia, to not allow the Viet Cong to come into Cambodia. See? So they had these little groups with American trainers and all that to train them how to ambush and how to fight guerrilla warfare and so on. So Jamie's experience and battle was that. So when he was made in Staff College, the tank brigade commander didn't have the foggiest notion of what is he supposed to do. The brigade major was appointed. There was a chap called M.C. Gupta. He's a sapper officer. Amatu M.C. Gupta was a major, senior to us by some months. But he was a meticulous mind. And he was very good to write the orders and instructions, but he didn't know what to write because Jamie has to give the orders. Jamie didn't know what to say. So both of them looked at me. I'm the DQ, but I'm the tank man. Hey, come on, you tell us, what are we supposed to do? So I said, all right, to do this. The tank should be lined up like this. The attack would go in like this at night. Now, in those days, nobody thought of tanks attacking at night because they didn't have night lights. And, nowadays you have infrared lamps which light up the enemy. So you can fire also at night accurately. You don't worry about anything like that. The tanks will attack at night. And to train those tank drivers, as I explained to them, what we're going to do is that each of the tank crews will be given a place in the area from which we're going to launch the counterattack, which is at the bottom of the hill. There is some grove of trees. I said, we'll be there laid out. and each tank will have a particular line of advance about 30 feet apart, right? Leading two troops up. That is, it's a squadron of tanks, two squadrons up. Each squadron has 3 troops here, 3 troops here, so 6 troops lined up. That's there are 3 tanks in a troop. So 18 tanks lined up. Get this hill, 30 yards apart. I said, you have to do nothing. Every tank was made to walk up this hill before the enemy attack, to reconnoiter how his tank will go, and he did it on foot. This is the plan. He did it on foot. So he did it not once, twice. First they did it at daytime, then they did it at nighttime. Then nighttime once, nighttime twice, nighttime 3 times. And I knew that the attack would have to go in by about 2 o'clock in the morning. So 2 o'clock in the morning, we made them practice this 4 or 5 times by walking up and seeing exactly how the tank will go. So I arranged this, and this was put in the orders. And N.C. Gupta, being a marvelous expert writer, he wrote the whole orders down, everything, every spick and span. So we all felt good about ourselves, and with smug expressions, we were waiting for the directing staff in charge of operations to come and question us what we are doing and argue it out. In walks Colonel Jacob. Lieutenant Colonel Jacob, I told you earlier, used to play bridge with my wife in the club, because when we were living in a distant area and staff college, and both things used to wait for my directing staff to stop the instruction at about 1:30, so that we would all go home. But he carried on and on and on, 2:33. So with the result, the poor girl was left there, and these chaps used to come for lunch and play bridge with her. And she was very good, great. So they were very impressed with her. And the Jacob had told her, which she told me later, that if your husband was here to play the bridge, the way he played bridge, I could write his old confidential report. His character, his conduct, what he's capable of, what he's not capable of, just hearing it. I had heard that. And I said, thank God I don't play bridge. Nobody wants to be assessed on your handling of cards, which I thought was a bum game anyway. So he walked in with another couple of beers to ask Jamie Hendricks his plan. So Jamie Hendricks read out the plan as we had decided. So Colonel Jacob, he told Jamie Hendricks, what sort of a nut are you? He really dressed him down so badly. About 10 minutes, he was shouting at him. You think yourself to be an armored brigade commander, and the way you're taking tanks at night, nobody knows, you probably shoot our own chaps all over the countryside. This is absolute nonsense, never heard of. Who the hell told you to do this? Where the hell did you get this idea? Jamie never said a word. He didn't even look at me. He basically put his out down. He said, I'm sorry, sir. He took it all on the chin. Then Colonel Jacob turned his attention to the brigade major, to the engineer's office. Major Gupta, for God's sake, you're the BM. Surely you can advise your commander something. You're supposed to be giving some advice. What some nonsense have you written here? So N.C. Gupta stood up and put his